Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you all out
Yes.
there. I forgot which day of the week it was, but hey, Darby Rollins tuning in here with author Cade Scott. We're going to be having kind of like a deep dive conversation on how to use fiction alongside developing fiction stories using Jarvis, using AI, weaving that into character development, storytelling, and just making your reader's experience going through your work as a writer that much more enjoyable. So Cade has a pretty cool background that we'll dive into a lot more detail here as we get in. But one of the biggest problems that he finds just as an author and a screenwriter are faced with writer's block. Cade has published over 100 short chat fiction stories on an app called Hooked, which I'm really excited to learn more about. And
Yeah.
recently, one of his short horror films had eclipsed 100,000 views on YouTube. That was released back in April. A really cool feat to feather to put in your cap there. And so you do a lot on the screenwriting part as well. We'll dive into that. Cade,
Correct.
thank you so much for joining me here today. And I'm excited to chat with you some more about fiction and Jarvis.
Well, thank you, Darby, for having me. I'm happy to be here and happy to help people write through fiction with Jarvis.
Yeah, I think like just kind of going back to January of this year, right, when we started getting like the AI on the radar, writer's block was the biggest thing that I saw just across the board. Helping people fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't really matter. It's that the curse of the blinking cursor that you'd stare at your screen.
Right.
I never get started. Can you give me a little background kind of on yourself in your own words and how you came across Jarvis and kind of how you're using it currently? We can kind of go from there.
That's a great question. I actually stumbled across it because I part-time for a digital marketing agency right now, and they started using Jarvis and allowed me to use Jarvis since I was the writer of the group. And so I started using the templates. I started using it for web copy, for social media copy, Google Ads copy, just general marketing materials like that. And I started to think, well, one, it shattered my writer's block for any kind of marketing copy. I think to me, the hardest thing when it comes to writing is getting that first draft down on a page. That blinking cursor, that blank page where you're just like, wow, this could go in so many directions. I could do so many things. Where do I even start, right? So for me, it was like, it nullified that fear just because it could give me that first draft, even if I had just a kernel of an idea. So in the marketing realm, it was like, great, my projects were sped up. I was writing so much, getting things accomplished in record time. And I started to think, could I do this with fiction? Could I do it with my fiction stories? Because I was running into writer's block there as well, of course. And so I just kind of started tinkering around with different fiction ideas, different character development ideas, and started asking Jarvis questions about my story, about my characters. And I was enthralled by what I found Jarvis could do.
Yeah, the more that Jarvis develops, and the better I found that I've gotten at asking Jarvis questions and giving it the right inputs. Like it just continues to compound, like alongside what they're doing on the tech. Because I don't like, there's a lot of things that they're improving on the product side, but it's like, how do you communicate most effectively here? And it really comes down to the questions that you're asking it, right?
Yes, that's a great point. It's like you're interviewing Jarvis every time you're working with him, and it's like any good interviewer, it comes down to the questions that you ask. How good are your questions? And if you find something interesting, asking a follow-up question, interrogating that aspect a little bit further. That's what I found was most helpful when it comes to Jarvis, because it can do anything and you can lead it in any direction. But it's about those good questions that you ask it, and if you do ask those good questions, good things will come out of it.
Yeah, and I know like when we connected a few weeks ago on this, I was like, a lot of what like I work with right now is in the nonfiction realm, but a big hurdle that even like myself as well as the people that I work with in using Jarvis for their nonfiction books is like, still before even getting to the writing, is having a clear idea of who your avatar is, who's your customer, who's the person that's going to be receiving your words, the reader on the other end. And a surprising amount of people, even though we like give worksheets and like this is how you go through this process, like still don't actually like develop a clear picture of like their avatar. Like say if it's a clear like customer that you have been serving for like 20 years in business, it might just come naturally to you. But like
Right.
how do you get that on paper is still kind of a roadblock. And you posted like a fiction sort of recipe a few weeks ago, and I started playing with it for a character I needed to build an avatar for. And an hour later, I have like 20,000 words in an interview format that Jarvis gave me, and I was just blown away because it literally took me 10 times longer to finish your recipe because Jarvis kept like interviewing itself, and it started asking itself questions as it was the character, and then answering and prompting itself more questions. So I was literally just like Command J. Like all there, and I'm like, this is giving me some really good ideas and some really unique insights as to like who this character really is. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, how do I turn this into a fiction story, like more so? And there's a lot that goes into the fiction story side. We were talking before here, Joseph Campbell. Who are some of the other like fiction writers and like storytellers that you've like looked up to in your career and still like try to aspire to craft your stories around their models?
That's a great question. For me, well, I've learned structure and frameworks from Joseph Campbell and Robert McKee, who wrote Story, which is like the Bible of how to write a story, how to write a screenplay in particular, but I think it spans across any kind of fiction story. And then we talked about Dan Harmon before this interview too, who came up with a story circle, which was influenced by Joseph Campbell. So those men really gave me some frameworks to operate in and recognize the framework that I was actually just unconsciously, subconsciously already writing toward. As far as fiction authors right now and screenwriters, I'm a horror writer, a horror screenwriter. So Ari Aster is doing some marvelous things on the screen right now. Jordan Peele, of course. There's been a real horror renaissance recently, really, with that's really smart horror, that's horror to think, literary horror. And it's just those directors are kind of leading the way in that realm. So I look up to them. I try to emulate them, even though their movies are unsettling and uncomfortable. But that's what makes them so great, you know?
Absolutely. And storytelling, screenwriting, just fiction in general, right? You're coming up with these stories that are designed to capture like our feelings and hold us in suspense in the term of horror. How are you using Jarvis for these short stories? Like we can go into like segue into Hooked a little bit because it's on the shorter sense, but you're also like expanding those into the screens. Like where does Jarvis fit in your process specifically?
That's a great question. And I'll answer the process question first and then move on to Hooked. I wish I would have had Jarvis when I was writing for Hooked.
Okay.
I had written for them for 5 years, ever since they started as this small little startup, wanted to do something big on phones, which was develop an app that you could read chat stories on. Like you're reading kind of a text message story, and then it developed into like you're just kind of reading a script. And then they started making those stories into short films. So I've been with them since the beginning, and the submission window actually just closed earlier this year. And I wish I would have had Jarvis to help me with all of those stories, because what happened was I suffered from idea fatigue. Like after you noted that I did publish 100 stories with them, but I wrote 300 plus, you know, the 200 that didn't make it, that got rejected. And so it was each day it was, oh man, I feel like I've done everything. What's another idea? And now I kind of use Jarvis, and I've created a recipe that maybe I can share with people afterwards that helps come up with ideas. All you do is type in the genre, and then you could type in horror and then say, hey, write 5 premises based on the genre above, and it'll give you 2 or 3 sentence outline of a story in that genre. And I wish I would have had that, because there were some great ideas that Jarvis came up with. But also too, just the mechanics of the story, of the plot itself, and the beats that I had to hit. The great thing about Hooked was it taught me, it gave me the experience of writing hundreds of stories and figuring out what works, and figuring out what's the pacing, what's a good pacing for a horror story, what needs to happen at the midpoint in order to keep your audience engaged and keep them reading from line to line to line. How do I tie in the beginning elements with the end so it all makes sense and comes together in an impactful way? So that practice kind of laid the groundwork for me to figure out, this is how you tell a compelling horror story. And so I had the framework there. Now I just wish I had Jarvis to create that, to create a recipe of that framework and fit those ideas within that framework. And I could have done double the work, I think. Sorry, it was kind of all over the place at this point, but so Hooked did a great job of teaching me how to write a story, and Jarvis now helps me in that kind of research phase, that generative phase, again, coming up with material in order to write with. If that makes sense.
Yeah, to pause on that note, is you're using Jarvis for research on generating ideas and plots and hooks and maybe narratives to continue to explore, or is there other ways you're using it for research?
So when it comes to writer's block, for me, it usually comes in kind of 2 ways. One, I don't know enough about the character, so I don't know how they would interact in a certain scene, what they would say, what they even want, how they push the story forward. Or 2, which is also connected, I just don't know what comes next. Maybe I know a lot about the character and the backstory, I just don't know where to take the story next. So the reason I created that kind of fiction persona or background recipe was to help me with that first part, with when I got writer's block on character, to help me understand who my character is, what do they want, what's at their core, what's driving them, and then what are maybe some past experiences that I can highlight within the story itself, or help me understand why they act the way that they do, which then helps me plot out the rest of the story, helps me place them within a given situation and understand this is how they would act, this is how they would respond to this given pressure or this given dilemma based on what I know from the past. So Jarvis helps me understand my character in a way, and he puts it into words in a way that I wouldn't otherwise be able to, right? Limited by my own experiences and backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And even if I kind of know what I want from the character and who they are, Jarvis, if I prompt Jarvis, he puts it in a way that's a lot clearer than what's in my head. So I can be like, oh, okay, that's the character. That's what I was meaning to kind of come up with, or kind of was a rough idea in my head. Now it's concrete on paper. And when it comes to plot, I was actually working with a director the other day, and we were stumped on how to expand one of our short ideas into a larger screenplay, and what that would look like. And we had different pieces of the plot. And so I just kind of put those pieces into Jarvis, and then Command J, just let Jarvis kind of work. And, I had to backspace a few times, but then eventually I was like, oh, that's actually a good direction. That's a good idea. And so it helps kind of move past the writer's block of the plot there as well. So that's just a couple of ways I'm using Jarvis to kind of break writer's block.
I know I don't know if I'd call it a hot topic as of late, but it's the outputs that you might get from Jarvis might sound right and true and factual, but they still need to be fact checked if you're writing stuff that needs to be accurate like that. And so I don't recommend people use Jarvis for researching facts. There's other tools that you can use specifically, but this is a different form of researching and using Jarvis to really do that character, that avatar development, that story that I think we're only scratching the surface of it right now. and like the questions. I don't know if you have that recipe on hand, if you'd be open to like diving into it sometime inside of this hour. We can share it with anyone who's interested, who wants to
Absolutely.
reach out to you for it as well. But when it comes down to getting these stories out and using Jarvis and like just all these tools that as an author, like the last thing you want to be is just a starving artist type of, right? Like never making any money because all your passion's going into your work, but you're not monetizing it, in a smart way so that you can continue to create, right? And now with all the tools that we've got available to us as creators, I think this is the best time ever for authors and writers and the creatives to harness these different publishing tools that we have, whether it's publishing a book or a blog post or just stuff on social media, right? You can use these AI to leverage it and get your message and your story out there. How are some ways that you're using Jarvis in your writing and your authorship to your screenplay to like actually make money, and just curious at how you're making income as a result of this? Is it you're getting hired as like a screenplay writer and then Jarvis is another tool with you, or are you maybe publishing on Amazon as well and you have like some income coming from fiction stories there?
That's a great question. I think that's the next step that I would love to hear people, if they have, kind of what that would look like. For me, it's, people approach me for short screenplays or for short stories or for screenplays, and I use Jarvis as a tool to help me with that. Like I said, I make income from using Jarvis to help me with blog posts and SEO and more digital marketing, to help supplement that fictional side. But the great thing is, just like Hooked was for me, I mean, it was a great stable income for 5 years. There's a lot of those apps or similar type of apps coming out or out there who will pay you for your work. And I don't know what those are. I think, there's great opportunity for Amazon and Kindle, the different platforms that are coming out there. Kindle Unlimited. I think that's my next big project, is to try to write a story in Jarvis and publish it on Kindle Unlimited and see what happens. But there's a lot of apps, storytelling apps, that need stories, that need content, and that Jarvis could help you with and help you with quickly. And you can monetize off of. I know there's an app that just came out called Dorian, where it's kind of a choose your own adventure type app that you can self-publish right now, and monetize off views and reads. So it's just a matter of kind of doing that research, figuring out what apps, what storytelling platforms are out there, and using Jarvis to start to make that income and make those stories. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is you don't, with AI and with everything, you don't have to go through the gatekeepers anymore. You don't have to go the traditional routes. And I think that's what's exciting about using Jarvis, not only for just marketing in general or whatever blog posts, but fiction. So I don't know. I don't know the direct answer to that question, but
yeah, I mean, I'm like exploring it myself as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think like what we're seeing, on our end is like it really all comes down to like the platform as the author that you need to create and be intentional about it from the beginning.
Yeah,
there's so many opportunities out there. Where does it make sense for you to choose your focus? Right. And like doing the proper research with it. I don't think there is one straight answer there. Obviously, like you just like Dorian I'd never heard of it before, but that sounds like a really cool place to, choose your own adventure type of stories. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
You mentioned Kindle Unlimited. Is that a new release on the Kindle side?
No, I think it's been around for a while. I think it's a subscription based, and you subscribe for, I think $7 a month. And you get all of these books that you can read.
That's right. Okay, I got you.
And I know there's like a Kindle digital platform that's just come out, which is even smaller, which is like 500 words per chapter that they're trying out. And so again, you could use Jarvis. You could try that out if that's the route that you want to take.
Well, I think that I need to put some more energy into publishing one on here, but it's the Kindle Vella, I think or Amazon Vella.
Oh yeah.
It's like 5,000 word limits to stories, but they're designed to be like series. So people will you'll buy one story, then your readers will buy more and more and more. A 5,000 word story is not that difficult to knock out.
Not that difficult for Jarvis. Yeah.
What would you, if you're looking at a short 5,000 word story, the parameters, how does a story like that flow? You were mentioning earlier the cadence and when does this need to happen in a horror story? Do you have a formula or I guess maybe not necessarily strict recipe, but how would you approach writing a 5,000 word short fictional story, horror being the topic?
That's a great question, because it'll differ, of course, giving length. So with 5,000 words, I always try to use the same quote unquote formula or framework. And that's Dan Harmon's story circle. And it's what I found a lot of the hook stories fell into, but you have to condense it a little bit. To me, for 5,000 words for that short of a story, there's only one movement that can happen, right? Whereas you look at a film, each scene has its own movement. And when I say movement, I mean something's changed, something has altered the character's kind of perception or world to where it's not the same anymore, right? They can't go back. And so in a movie or a novel, you'll have many instances of that. In a 5,000 word story or a hooked story that's 1,000 words, you can only do that once, right? So it's usually one scene in one place. You have your hook at the beginning that immediately reaches out and grabs your audience. It's in media res. It's a kind of an old adage and an ancient idea of starting in the middle of things. And then that can work as your inciting incident to kind of propel your character forward into the unknown world to the point where they adapt to that unknown world and either survive it or don't survive it. Regardless, they come out the other end having changed for better or for worse.
And you keep it in that one scene just for the focus of how you can use those words. You might as well paint the picture and keep it focused. If you try to add too many in there, it just kind of dilutes it maybe.
Yeah, that's also a great point. And with Hooked, a lot of the edits I got were if the next sentence isn't pushing the story forward or pushing the plot forward, then it shouldn't be there. Whereas a novel, you can kind of meander and maybe go into some backstory. 5,000 words or 1,000 word short story, you have to make sure that plot is always being pushed forward, that each line you deliver is delivering new information, is pushing the story forward. We're not going back, we're not standing still. It has to go forward.
No, that makes sense. Don't want to put you on the spot here, but would you be down to try and write a 5,000 word short story right now and make it up on the fly and actually go through the process so that we could I'm curious how would we collaborate in making something like that with Jarvis? I've done it before on fiction. Maybe we can do something with nonfiction. Or no, nonfiction. Maybe we can do something with fiction, but with this. Sorry, I mixed up my words.
Okay, yeah, no, you're good. I was like, I got a personal story. I mean, I can. Do you want me to share my screen and pull up the recipe? And
yeah, let's do it. Let me give you access to sharing. You should just request to share. got a few people commenting in on here.
Update. See, share screen.
All right, cool.
Can you see my screen?
We can now. Mm-hmm.
All right, so
if you could, real quick, whenever we're opening it up, try and zoom in once we get in a little bit, just for the quality here. Anyone that's watching, great to see you. Happy Tuesday. Let us know if you can't see the screen or anything like that in the comments, so we can zoom in and make sure it's all clear.
Here's my recipes that I've kind of put together for fiction right now. But for this exercise, we use the fiction story idea and outline. We'll go ahead and run it. So you see here, we could start with an idea, a certain genre, get into a short premise, come up with a title, and then we'll use that as the title here, and then the premise we'll use as the content brief. And then we'll just try to plot it out point by point. I have 7 plot points here. At least we can come up with an outline, I guess. That's all right. Should I pick a genre, any genre?
Oh, what's something that you've wanted to write about but you haven't? Like, what is there a genre that you've been on the fence about writing?
Oh man. That's a good question. Let's stick with horror and see what we get, because if we encounter some sensitive content, I can talk through that too, because that happens a lot before. But I'll stick with what I'm good at. We'll go with horror. I've been writing a lot of comedy lately, but let's see. So type in the genre, write a list of storylines based on the genre.
We got a psychological horror.
Ooh. All right, so it gives us kind of 3 storylines of premises here. A group of teenagers head to the woods for a Halloween weekend and become lost looking for their cabin. You're driving down a country road when you see an abandoned, broken down house on the side of the road. Your plane crashes in front of a small village, and throughout your time there, strange happenings keep taking place. This might be a high concept. Let's do it again. Those are pretty good. Let's try with the psychological horror and see the nuance and the difference here. Okay, so it gives me small nuggets, kernels. Small town with a terrible secret. Ghosts that are more real than they seem. The stranger who knows too much. Let's try it again. Let's see if it gives us.
You could zoom in just a tad bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me when.
Perfect. Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's try it one more time. Alarm goes off. There's no danger. You see your face in the mirror and it's not you. So it gives you
terrifying.
Kids with knives who hunt each other. These are already turning out to be really creepy.
What a question too from one of the comments.
Yeah,
saying they find that Jarvis works well in a similar way to exquisite corpse writing. I'm not familiar with that term. I just did a quick Google search. And it seems like is that something you're familiar with?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Exquisite corpse writing.
It's worth a Google.
I'm gonna write that down before I. What is it? What's the?
I'm looking it up now. I'm just gonna pull up Wikipedia.
Okay.
So exquisite corpse, also known as exquisite cadaver, is a method in which a collection of words or images is collectively assembled. Each collaborator adds to a composition in sequence, either by following a rule or by being allowed to see only the end of what the previous person contributed.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like a popcorn story.
Okay,
almost.
so it's like, oh yeah, so it's when two writers add content together, and one writes something, the next writer. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's
Jarvis good for collaboration on fiction stories. That's great.
yeah.
Because I guess given all that context, you can just pick up back up where it left off without you having to really dive into that. Okay, that sounds cool though. Should try that next time.
Absolutely.
All right. Any of these seem interesting enough to
Halloween
flesh out?
Halloween in a cabin is too cliche, I think.
I know. I was about to say.
We've got the theme, the storyline for Lost at the bottom there. Plane crashes.
Yep.
This is a remote island. Let's just do the plane crash one and see where it takes us.
Okay, yeah, why not? So here's our premise. All right, so I'll go down here, insert that premise there, and I just want to give that's a working title here. That's what I said, or that's what I like to think of it, so that we can give Jarvis some context over here as we continue to write. Let's see what we got. Strangers in Twilight Village, terror on the other side of the veil. Interesting. Beware the Ringmaster. Any of these good as a working title?
I think the Strangers in Twilight Village is the one that makes the most sense.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So this will be our working title.
What if we did Terror in Twilight Village? We combine
Terror. Yeah, good idea.
The Terror in Twilight Village.
Terror in Twilight Village. So there, I'll put it over there.
Okay, cool.
Premise. We'll take out the your, so it doesn't get confused. Plane crash throughout. Strange things keep taking place. The terror. What is the terror? All right. Go ahead.
Is this what you're going to work with Jarvis to develop who the terror is, or is that more? Because how I've been normally felt the content brief for like how I've been doing it for the character development is like, what's the who, what, where, when, how, and why of what we're getting at, and then giving that as the context for Jarvis to continue brainstorming.
We could do that, yeah. Make sure this. Let's see. And then this is where kind of the interrogation might come into play, right? What is the terror? Highlight. Groups, villagers to take drastic measures. And it keeps going. Procrastination. So let's run it back, and then if it doesn't give us a better answer. Interesting. Terror is that the strange happenings only take place at night, and you don't really know how to find out what is causing them. Just want to continue this thread and see where it leads us. Why is the terror? This would be a good second-person story, I guess. Let's just prompt it until Village of Witches and Warlocks.
Ooh.
Oh, it's coming out with a game.
You have to stay in the light through a game if you don't want to get caught by shadows. If you do, You will take 3 turns for them to catch up with you. However, let's keep it going.
See what happens.
Nighttime is mandatory. If you miss your sleep, you keep reloading until... Oh, okay. It's like it's a terrible spell cast by witches and warlocks on this village. What if you're stuck in a simulation, like inside of a video game?
Oh, yeah. That could be the major reveal at the end.
Like
Play test.
You wake up, your plane crash landed in a small village in the middle of the night, but you don't remember getting on the plane.
Yeah, it just kind of starts. Oh, that's interesting. What are some of these? It's coming up with a game. Hey.
We just turned this into a Kickstarter campaign for our new game, The Terror in Twilight Village.
New Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
To sleep.
Light
You have to.
flash. Okay.
I like this as a mechanic though, because that's a common trope in horror. What is the mechanic of the monster? What's the mechanic of the terror? Shadows moving and trying to catch you is terrifying. Sing karaoke.
Just had a comment come through, and I can't see the names of the users on here, so I apologize for not using anyone's name on here. I need to activate that in this account. Hopefully by the next live it will be. Saying this is writing RPG literature, which is huge exploding niche on Kindle. Interesting.
Yeah, we've been talking about Kindle.
RPG literature.
Role-playing game. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, similar to Dungeons and Dragons, games like that, I would think. I like to let's do this. Let's find out who the main character of this story is. Who is our person? Who's our hero? Girl named Mitchie. She's just trying to survive what life throws at her. So that's interesting. I have here optional complete the fictional character backstory recipe, but let's ask some questions about Mitchie. What does Mitchie want? She wants the safest life possible. Doesn't want to disturb others. But if we force her into this scenario, so let's just ask why.
Right.
Cautious and shy. Okay. See what Jarvis comes up if we just hit Command J.
Got a link. I'm going to check it out. So, lit RPG, literary role-playing game.
Sorry, I had kind of glitched on me there. Repeat that.
No, I'm looking at the just looking into what literary role-playing game is the genre. It's interesting. Definitely use Jarvis for it. Do we know what she wants?
Right. Still having some technical issues actually with hearing. Maybe it's on my side.
Can you hear me right now?
Glitching in and out.
Weird. Well, I can see your screen.
Might just be me. I don't know if anyone else is having this
Is anybody else
problem, but I can keep going with the story.
Yeah. Okay.
See what happens. Just trying to see what life throws at her. What is the world? Mix modern day and old fashioned. Interesting. Okay. Let's ask this. This has been graphic questions.
Can you talk through a little bit about what kind of questions you're asking here and why you're asking them?
Small village far. But trying to put her in the village. That's interesting. All right, let's scroll back here. She's cautious and shy. Fear. Whoa.
She fears that her sister might kill her.
Is a big thing here. She fears that her sister might kill her, so we might put her sister on the island. Right? The reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm trying to get to the core of this character. So I just started with asking who the main character is, Mitchie. And then from there, I'm just trying to get to, again, what drives her? What does she want? What does she fear? What does she actually need? And then usually I'll use that as a jumping off point to start the plot and tie in the terror to the character itself. Because ultimately I want, and that's another thing, I want my monster or my terror or my horror to connect to some sort of core element of the character himself. To me, that's more impactful. To me, that's what my idols are doing right now. Is if you look at Midsommar, right? The main character, what she wants is family, is to belong, is to feel included. And in a weird, twisted way, at the end, the cult that she joins and that terrorizes the rest of her friend group includes her, makes her feel like she belongs to the point where she assimilates with that cult. So the terror kind of feeds into what that character wants. So right now, I'm trying to get at that character's core so I can start to connect the monster, the horror to my character. I think it makes a more satisfying story in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Can you still hear me, or am I cutting in and out?
Let's see.
Sounds like it's still giving issues.
Hello, Jarvis. Let's see. So let's take this out. Let's see if we can just come up with a story based on these premises here. Darby, you've talked about kind of filling out content brief. So we'll add these pieces that we found out about our main character, about the world itself into the content brief to give Jarvis maybe a little more context so that when we start plotting out those points or going through the story circle, Jarvis will understand what we're trying to do. Let's just say, just changing it to Taylor and not get caught by shadows. Do it well. Let's just put information. Kind of want to get at, I want to ask it one question. What causes the plane to crash? That might give us our first actual plot. Interesting. It's been asking herself all throughout the story. She's trying to find out why this happened and what had caused it. So it looks like it's reading from over here. At one point, she felt like this was her fault and killed everyone on the plane. Let's just keep going. Now it's going to try to plot out the actual story. Interesting. So here we're starting to get into some deeper, maybe character issues, right? And trying to figure out, okay, this is how Mitchie's story may connect to the shadows in the village and the plane crash. Maybe she's haunted by the shadows of her parents, right? By the shadows of her sister, so on and so forth. And they could be personification of that. This is a great character moment here. Just want to start Jarvis from this point. I promise I'll move on to the plot points in here. She lived with her grandparents that took care of her. When she lost them, she had to find her new way of life. What does she learn? Have to be afraid of something. She finds out it's not easy to stay away from the shadows, and she is forced to confront fears at night. Ooh. Okay.
All right.
The book shows that after Mitchie comes face with death, she's capable of carrying on and doing what needs to be done in order to survive in this new world. So here's some good stuff here of what the character could learn by the end of our story. Right, and again, how those shadows can personify Mitchie's want or desire or fear within herself. I wonder if this could all fit. I wonder if this is bigger. 300 characters. To give it a little context. Let's just say she learns I get really messy with Jarvis. I constantly break things, highlight things, break things off in mid-sentence, and then worry about piecing stuff together in the end. All right. So now that we kind of have that template, that's where these 3 bullets come into play. So this is Dan Harmon's story circle right here. So a day in the life, call to action, refusal to call. You enter an unfamiliar situation. This is your inciting incident. The character adapts to it, gets what they wanted. But they pay a heavy price for it and return to the old world, transformed, having changed. And so these are kind of prompts to help flesh out those different plot points. And then from there, I would go in and start writing. But let's see. And this might not be completely relevant to the story. But
Worked at the bakery.
ready for what happens at night. So just kind of giving context. You can ask if it relates to the character itself, but maybe I should ask this. Maybe some background. Why does Mitchie get on the plane? Better question maybe is where is she going, but let's see what Jarvis has to say. Sorry, I came for church. Interesting. Ah. So again, like what we kind of experienced with the character backstory, it's already prompting the next thing or the next plot point in its own way. I'm just hitting compose and seeing how far Jarvis will go with this thread. First dead end, first disaster. So it's saying she's part of the village, which is kind of getting away from what we first had. Again, oh, what are they? They're not human beings, but rather something else. Ghosts.
Ghosts.
It's a good ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now it's getting into a flood narrative. So we have a big chunk of plot points and stuff that, again, I think if I were to spend more time with this, I would go back through and kind of pick out, like you saw me doing, get really messy with Jarvis, and pick out the sentences and pieces that I thought were engaging, that I really enjoyed, that I thought the story was going down, and continue to flesh out those pieces. So even though it's kind of going, yeah, it's fast brainstorming. It's kind of going in a different direction, but you don't have to stare at a blank page and wonder, where should I go? Where can I go? You can go one way, and if you don't like where Jarvis is going, you can
cut it
delete
off
and ask another question to go a different way. Or you can tinker with the information in the content brief. Let's say it seems to think that Mitchie is in the village. If you want to stick with the storyline that Mitchie is on the plane that crashes, you can say Mitchie is on a plane. Maybe not space here. Since we need to include your name, we can take that out. A plane that crashes from a small village and drop the main character's time there. Strange happenings take place. So you can clean this up. See, I wanted to clarify to Jarvis that this is the direction that we want to go. She's trying to spy what life throws at her. Let's take this out actually and just keep with the big plot points. Caught by shadows. It's like to be afraid of something she finds out that's not easy. Stay away from the shadows when she first comes fears at night. So there's kind of a nice small character arc, okay, after tinkering with it. And then I can go back and start the process again and see if Jarvis gives me better direction. See if I can get up to the front where the premise starts. Let's just...
That is the benefit of using Jarvis for Exquisite Corpse. You can change and edit, and Jarvis won't get upset like another writer would. Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't aware of what the Exquisite Corpse was before. I'm definitely curious to dive in and explore some more info on that.
Okay, so it's giving me kind of the content brief again. And so those could be my beats, right? Those could be the big arcs. Yeah. I could go under those. Continue. Flesh them out. You can even section off certain things. Little small village. I could say she quickly finds out that strange things start to happen. Here in a bit. And then allow Jarvis, I can even hit this. Shadows are everywhere and there's a curfew at night. Here we go. She must stay in the light or something bad will happen. She learns that she's capable. Okay, so it's starting to get into it, but I like it up to here. All right. So you can, again, look through this, edit it, and that's what I do. It still takes a lot of guidance, but edit it and keep going until you feel like you have a complete story. And then you just start filling in the gaps from there. So yeah, it's messy.
But I'm not sure if you can hear me right now, Cade. But can you hear me on your own? No. Yeah. So I mean, just kind of a quick recap. We got to sign off here at the top of the hour. Little bit of an audio issue between this new platform we're streaming on right now. So we'll work on getting that fixed for the next live, but we'll be reposting this as a replay. And if you guys are interested in getting the recipes from Cade or myself, or want to just kind of, jump on these lives with us, comment below, let us know, and really thank Cade for his time coming in with us today. And we'll see you guys all at the next live. Cheers.